Hello and welcome back to the NUFC Opinion Blog for a special interview today, replacing the Thursday Team Talk podcast. I'm joined today by Stephen Shaw, who is a specialist in sports science. He works up at Morpeth Town Football Club. Stephen, how are you today?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm absolutely fine. So today we're going to be talking about just a bit about sports science, especially considering that Steve Bruce seems to think giving his players lots of days off might be a good thing in some reasons. We'll get to that a bit later on. But firstly, Stephen, tell me a little bit about your role in sports science and how you got to where you are right now.
Okay, so I suppose the long short story is I started off in personal training. Didn't do anything until in the field, kind of until in my mid-20s. I'd done different jobs. I joined the Navy from school. Done office jobs, worked at Black Horse Finance, worked at Nissan, done me stint in there, or one of the suppliers at least, and then was interested in the gym. Got into personal training on the off chance. Went into Newcastle College on a day off with one of the lads. I was actually wanting to start teaching personal training courses, and I kind of had a gap in my knowledge in terms of anatomy and stuff. So I thought I need to learn a bit more. So I went into Newcastle College on the off chance to see if they had any courses, and I was lucky enough that because I was 26, it was actually an open day. So whether it was fate or not, if you believe in fate, maybe it was. So there was actually an open day going on. And because I was 26, my GCSE spelled fudge. I didn't do well at school at all. I had no interest in the latter years of school. I knew I was joining the Navy. I wasn't bothered. And because I was 26 and I had a personal training qualification, I was able to get on a sports therapy degree at Newcastle College. So I've done that. In my first year at college, I got a placement with Morpeth Town. My best friend, Carlo, he was playing for Morpeth at the time, asked us to go along. John King was manager then. Asked us to go along and help out, and it was literally just first aid, really. I was a medic in the Navy and done some medic training, so that probably helped us more than my degree, to be honest. So I've done some just first aiding, basically, my first year at uni. Had another season there, and then in my last year at uni, I wrote letters off to pretty much every kind of league club in the area who was close enough to see if I could come in during pre-season, get some experience. I was lucky enough, I got an answer back from Middlesbrough. I went into Middlesbrough for an interview, seeing the guy there who was the head of medicine at the time, was Grant Downey, absolute legend of a man and a legend in the industry. And he took us on a short term at first. It was like a 6-week trial through pre-season. I was actually supposed to go to Magaluf. And I didn't go because I had this placement, which is, I don't think as many students would do that, if I'm honest. I think most people, I've had interns now and students now, and it's like dragging teeth trying to drag them in, and I'm not back going to Magaluf because I thought, well, it's just unbelievable experience. So I spent the full 6 weeks there. It was when Gordon Strachan was manager. And I had a great time, and through the back of that, I was asked if I wanted to kind of stay on for that season. So I was coming in 1 day a week. He just said to us, you can come in as much as you want, but I would rather that you had a day where you guaranteed us what day you were coming in. So then I was doing it every Friday. I was still working in personal training. I was at uni at the time, still doing everything I'd done. I was still kept my business going the whole time. Had a season with Middlesbrough part-time. I was still at Morpeth. I think I've maybe gone to a Heaven Ray role then. Went to a few different non-league clubs. Had another season with Middlesbrough part-time, just literally going in 1 day a week, doing sports massage, helping the players in the gym, just supervising gym sessions, that kind of thing. Learned loads. I mean, I think I was really lucky in terms of like the industry leaders that I got to work with, in terms of Grant, Chris Mosley, who's still the physio there now. Nick Grantham was a strength and conditioning coach at the time, who's like an industry leader. Adam Kerr, who's now at Leeds United's academy, he was there the second season I was there. I kind of fell on my feet with the the people that were actually there opened up a lot of doors for us. I left there after 2 seasons just because I was taking up a student's place. Really, they didn't have the funding for sports therapists. They looked at more kind of physios. So I went to seeing Red Star, Dunstan. I went up to Berwick Rangers. I had a season at Berwick, which was fantastic. Got the Scottish Cup quarter final, which was the furthest here getting in 50 years. Had a game against Hibs live on Sky Sports. It was Sunday, unbelievable. A couple of games at Hampden Park, playing Queen's Park. So really great experience. Met some good lads up there. People I still talk to now. Fantastic club. Came back and had a season with helping out with Newcastle Women a little bit. Went back to see him because again, my mate Carlo, who I seem to follow about, he was playing for Seam at the time. So I thought, well, hadn't seen him much. I put 24,000 miles on my car driving up to Berwick. They train in Edinburgh, believe it or not. So I was up there every Tuesday, Thursday night. And then from Seam, I was asked to go into Morpeth by their manager just before they went to Wembley and they won the FA Vars while they were there. I joined that summer, and I've been there ever since. In that time as well, my own practice, we started. Nicky, who's the manager at Morpeth, he got me into Parkview Academy, and they didn't have a sports science department, but they needed somebody to who's got my kind of pitch side medical qualification. To be in their league, you have to have a certain level of qualification, which I had. So I was doing the Wednesday games, then it evolved into doing recovery sessions, then it evolved into teaching the anatomy for their BTEC diploma, then it evolved into leading their strength and conditioning. Then we got GPS pods, which I knew about for Newcastle Women. I got them in and we kind of built a department. And that ended up with, I think we had about 12 interns at the end, and we went from having 30 players to having 150. I think they're on for having probably 300 this season and this summer. And I've just recently left there. I'm now going back to doing my own practice in Morpeth Town. Starting an academy this year as well, so hopefully I'll be getting involved with that a little bit more. So yeah, it's kind of gone a complete full circle from starting as a student at Morpeth to what looks like being full time there, and it's been some journey. I've met loads of people, loads of players, but like the journey from having, you know, everything that you see, like players, and just, you know, they're not players, they're just people, and you see injured people from kind of that first day of getting injured to getting back playing, running about, enjoying what they're doing. The ones that are in the full-time jobs are the real heroes, not the professional footballers. The ones who, you know, if you get somebody who works in a factory to come back from an ACL after 9 months, that's a lot easier than getting someone. A lot harder than getting someone like Virgil van Dijk to come back after an ACL for 9 months. So they're the heroes really. So yeah, I've really loved it. And that's probably the longest answer you've ever had to a question.
Yeah, but no, it was all. It was great to hear. It's very interesting. Obviously, given what you've said there and your experience in sports science, how important would you say it is to the modern game in football?
It's probably vital, but probably maybe not as important as people in sports science think it is. Like the be all and end all is it's football. It's the game hasn't really changed, but the dynamics around it, the professionalism around it has. I know people will look at the game now, and I've been in those conversations with people in the pubs where they're saying, well, it's still the same game. We used to work hard then, and we used to do all this running then, and it has evolved. I think, objectively, the science, the data shows that people still run as far as they did then. They used to run as far as they did then, but now they're running a lot faster. The sprint distances are a lot faster. The intensity of the game has probably doubled in kind of even since the Premier League's come in inception. So, people looking at the game and thinking it hasn't changed because of sports science, it 100% has. That's a fact. And our job really is to support the coaches. Sometimes sports scientists, I've maybe been guilty of it at times, where you kind of think you're telling the coaches what to do, and you want to try and do things, like the science is. But football's it's not a science, it's an art form really. It's an art applied with applied science, and it's our job to kind of support people, try to reduce injuries, try to make them more robust. If they get injured, try and come back as quick as possible, but try to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's kind of our job, is just to support the people, support the athletes, support the coaches, look at their nutrition, look at their hydration, try to look at it holistically from kind of a whole standpoint.
Now, just to bring things on to a sort of Newcastle United perspective, there's been a lot of reports lately about Steve Bruce giving players plenty of days off. I think at the moment there's a whole report going around saying that he's given 6 days off to the players, considering we've just lost to Brighton 3-0 at the weekend just gone. What would you say is the impact of giving players so many days off? Do you think it's bad or good? Or
well, it's the international break, and I think people jump on sound bites because I've seen that, and it was 6 days. They're having 6 days off in 9, but they chose that 9 days very carefully because, okay, it's 6 out of 9, but it's also 6 out of 15 probably, because from that Saturday game I think it was a Saturday they played Brighton, was it not? So I don't think their next game was until 15 days after that. I believe is it Tottenham you've got on the Sunday?
It is on the 4th of April.
Yeah, so it's 6 out of 15. Now I don't know their schedule, and I think a lot of it is out of context, and people don't understand like the variances of what goes on behind the scenes. I've heard Pep Guardiola say he's going to have 6 days off, and he's not even going to think about football, and they're doing exactly the same now. Man City are top of the league, so he probably gets away with saying that, and people go, "Oh, it's excellent. He's letting the players decompress and etc. etc." But because Newcastle is struggling a little bit, they maybe look at it differently. Now, what you have to take into account is out of those times. Now, Brighton was away from home. Brighton's not close. It's not an easy game. So you're probably always going to. I think a lot of clubs and a lot of coaches now will they'll have a recovery day straight after a game. So there's different, and this comes down to coaches and managers' philosophies. So, and again, supporters don't always get that. So some coaches will have the players in the day after a game, but then they'll have the next day off. So what we call game day +2. So that'll be the recovery day, because that's generally the day that you're stiffest. So they'll get them in on a recovery day, and the next day do a recovery session, and maybe go. And I've seen people say, well, they could have sat and went through the game and all that kind of stuff, like a horror show, and watched the game and all that. But that probably would have sounded lovely, and it probably would have sounded good to supporters if there'd been a story in the Chronicle saying he forced them to watch the game and all that, and the supporters would go, "Oh, that's really good." But in reality, it's the international break. It's the only time the fixtures have been absolutely full on, and you're going to have a lot of I don't know how many international footballers Newcastle have got, or how many they've got on international duty. You might know that, but
you have a lot of them in it. I don't think there's a few.
You have to consider that they'll leave. They'll go away from the group. So out of your first 11, I don't know how many, but let's say, for example, you lost half the international break. What's the point in 20 other lads sitting and watching that horror performance if 5 of them aren't there? So there's that side of it. Also, you have to factor in the travel coming back from Brighton. So the chances are, realistically, you'd probably never really be in on that Sunday. You may do, but it's unlikely. And I don't know the travel arrangements. No one does. We don't know if they're flying, if they're busing, train. We don't know. Obviously, with COVID, it's a lot more complicated. So they'd be unlikely to be in on that Sunday. So that's kind of one of your days. And then you've got the Monday. Now, normally, generally speaking, if you have a Saturday to Saturday day, you would have, so you play on a Saturday, you may have either the Sunday off or the Sunday in. Then you'd either have the Monday off or the Monday in for that recovery day. The Tuesday is generally your hardest day. That's normally the hard working day. Normally, English philosophy is you'd have a Wednesday off anyway. That's like a traditional day off for footballers, because you've worked hardest on that Wednesday. Then on the Thursday, it's a bit of a kind of midday. It's more tactical, it's more out of possession stuff that they look at. And then on Friday, it's generally set pieces, little phase of play, walkthroughs. and then you play on the Saturday. So really, out of 7 days, you probably only work hard, or what you would consider hard, maybe 2 or 3 of those days. If you don't have that game on the Saturday, you don't need to do that. So I don't know what days he's had them in, had them off, but I would imagine he'd have said, right, if it was me, and I have to put it in the context of what I would have done, I would have said, right, Sunday off because he's a travelling, Monday come in, recovery day, Tuesday, Wednesday, work hard, and then I would have said Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and then you would kind of go back to your routine for that following match day. Now, because he's don't play until a Sunday, there's no reason why I wouldn't have then said Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday off. And then you come in on that Tuesday, that's technically what would be a Monday, which would be like a regeneration, start moving again day. The Wednesday would be a hard working day. Your Thursday would be a hard working day-ish, or possibly off. And then your Friday, Saturday would be more your tactical days leading into that game on a Sunday. Now, for supporters, they might think, well, that's, you'd expect that you want them running, or you think they're not fit enough. But is Newcastle's problems because they're not fit enough, or is it just because they're not good enough? Is it because tactically they're not good enough? I don't know. And we don't know the context we don't know who's fit, who's injured. You don't know what size of group is going to be there. And sometimes when I can't imagine, no matter what's going on in there, I can't imagine confidence is at its highest. So sometimes it's good to just let them get away from each other and have a bit of space. And, the professional ones, they're all professional athletes. They're all going to still be doing bits. They're all still going to be doing little bits at home. They've all got home gyms. They'll be on bike rides with their families. And I've seen clubs where international breaks, the lads are going to Marbella for 4 days, or they go to Dubai for 4 days. That's just, they go to Portugal and play golf for 3 days. It's like a natural, the international break for a lot of footballers, if they're not in international football, is when they get, it's when they have a little holiday. It's when they have a little holiday with their family. That's what happens. Now in COVID times, maybe it's not as easy as that, and maybe they won't go away. But it is all contextual, and me personally, I'm not a Newcastle fan, so I'd love to come on and batter them and say whatever, but I think it's been blown out of proportion a little bit. One, because nobody actually knows the situation and the context of what's going on behind the scenes, but two, it's not out of the normal to have that amount of days off. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that he gives them a lot of days off, but a lot of managers give players games off. Days off, and it goes very well. It just happens to be that at the minute they're not going well. Now, you could argue that both ways and say they should be doing this, they should be doing that, but it's probably easier for the man in the pub to sit and slag them off than it is for me, because one, I know a couple of people behind the scenes there. I haven't spoken to anyone there. I can just go off my experience, which is limited at that level. But what I would do at that kind of level, and everything comes down to context. So it's probably easier from the outside looking in to slag it off and all that. But like I say, I've seen Pep Guardiola saying, I'm going to have 6 days and not even think about football. And you have to consider they've got 15 days before that next game. What is the point in sitting through a video in 14 days? If I was going to make them watch the Brighton game, I'd make them watch it on the Sunday morning or the Saturday afternoon, or the Saturday after training, maybe, because they'll be training the day before that Tottenham game. That's when I want them to watch the video. I don't want them to sit and watch the video 2 weeks ago and then forget about it. I want it to be fresh in their minds. So that's probably my take on it, mate.
That's really interesting insight, because there has been, of course, a lot of complaints.
What's your thoughts on it?
The way I looked at it, I can understand completely what you've said there, and obviously you're the expert in this field, so I have to take that. Obviously,
I'm by no means an expert.
Well, you're certainly more expert.
I'm a little bit more informed, yeah.
But I think the reason why I had a concern with it is because Steve Bruce seems to have some sort of reputation for allowing an excessive amount of days off compared to other managers. I think when Danny Rose was there last season on loan, he couldn't believe how much they were getting off, and compared to when he'd been at Tottenham, etc., and throughout the previous career. And I just think training methods as well.
What you have to take into account there, though, is the club he's coming from is used to playing European football. So they'll probably be recovering and playing a game probably every 3 or 4 days rather than every 5 or 6. And that makes a big difference. And also the philosophies of the coaches he's worked under have been, I don't know if he played under Jose Tottenham, did he?
He did at the stop then and got a little bit sort of.
So I think
that's why
Jose Mourinho is definitely a tactical periodization person. So he comes from that field where it'll be a game day +2, where they'll have days off. So his philosophy will be completely different. Pochettino's philosophy will be completely different because they've got more of a continental approach. Yeah, I know where they're coming from, but I've seen that kind of work both ways. I've seen where, clubs have had, they'll lose a game and then the next day the lads are in and they're working hard, and that looks good to supporters, but in reality all you're doing is thrashing a player. And the problem is, and what people maybe don't realise, is the capacity to work harder. You're more prime athletes, generally speaking, the ones at the better clubs are more of a prime athlete. And those ones that are more prime athlete have a bigger work capacity. So the lower down you go, sometimes, not always, but sometimes they can't work as much and you don't have the squad size. Now, at Tottenham, it might have been that Pochettino and Mourinho could push them really hard, thinking, well, if I injure Danny Rose, I've got, I don't know who was the other left backs there, but he maybe had 2 or 3 options. Whereas at a Newcastle, where once you get past your first 11, you start struggling for points almost, and you want your best 11. And the goal of any coach should be, and I know the goal of every sports science department, is to allow the manager to pick his best 11 as often as possible. And the more times you've got a chance of picking your best 11, the more times you've got a chance of winning games. And it might be a case where he's almost protecting, thinking, well, if we have another couple of days here and we get another couple of injuries, we are going to struggle. So play well today, lads. Give us everything, and I'll reward you with a day off. It might be that, we don't know, but I know where you're coming from, and I know from a supporter's point of view, when you sat in the bar, you think these lads need to be working harder and all that kind of stuff. And I get that sometimes from my chairman, where he'll say all the time, do you think, it's only ever after a defeat where you'll hear, do you think we're fit enough? If you win a game, no one ever questions your fitness.
Yeah.
And it's always because you've just been better. If you lose a game, it's like, do you think we're fit enough? I think we could be fitter. So it's one of them where I think if you were to look at the running stats, well, maybe not, because it comes down to the way they play as well. I mean, Newcastle have got just literally just off that Brighton game, I just thought they've got quite a strange system.
Yeah.
And I am a coach, but I'm nowhere near that kind of level to be questioning anyone. I can't question Steve Bruce. Nobody can from our level. But, I think they kind of sit in deep. So I think if you're a team that's not going to dominate possession, which I think you'd agree Newcastle don't dominate possession very often. If you don't dominate possession very often, you kind of generally have 2 ways of playing that. So you'll either sit deep and hope to catch teams on the break, in which case you need pace. And I don't think Newcastle are generally blessed with pace when Almiron and Saint-Maximin's out the team. And the other way to do it, if you don't have the ball, is to try and win it higher up the park and kind of press high. And they don't seem athletic enough or have that kind of intention. So their intention looks to be to sit off and catch teams on the break. But then I don't think they've got the pace to actually quickly win the ball deep and get up the park very quickly. I don't know. So it is intriguing, but I think it just comes down to you are what you are with the players that you've got, and you've got to try and find a system that kind of works. And at the minute, it's not working for them. But as a Sunderland supporter, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, I think just the thing with Steve Bruce, I think there was a lot of criticism towards him because it seems as though to some supporters this is not a new occurrence of him being a manager at a club. It's happened in Villa before, it's happened at Hull before, where he's sort of allowed, well, not necessarily he's allowed for, but there's been a lot of injuries occurred at a similar sort of time and in a similar sort of fashion. And whether that's to do with the training methods, I don't know. The days of no one really knows that, but I just think people saw a pattern with him at all the sort of clubs he's been at.
Well, it's it's a fact, and it's been run as there's been studies done that basically injury records follow managers around. That's a fact. I mean, to be fair, Jurgen Klopp was getting the same kind of stick a few years ago, but when you've got better players to come in than your first team players, it almost doesn't matter because you've got cover. When you don't, when you're at a club that doesn't have that, and you need your best 11, you need someone to come in whose philosophy and I think, you know, sometimes the shade will get cast at the medical staff and at the sports science staff, but the first team coach or the manager is the one that sets a schedule. They are head of performance. You can have a head of performance and someone with a job title saying head of performance or head of strength and conditioning or head of sports science, but your head of sports science, your head of all of that, your head of performance is your manager. They're the one that agree or sign off on your philosophy. And generally speaking, well, it's a fact that injury records will follow a manager around. Now, that sometimes that won't matter, and sometimes you'll have a team will win the league and they'll have the worst injury record. I think Huddersfield, when they were relegated a couple of seasons ago, they had the best injury record in the league. So some would argue, well, should you have pushed it a little bit more and got more injuries, because that may have translated into performances points. Nobody knows. It's one of those where it's, again, everything's out of context and you have to kind of take it on its own merits. But it is a fact. There's been studies run on that and shown that injury records will generally follow a manager around.
On the subject of bringing players back into action after they've been injured, does it occur that if you bring a player back in too quickly after an injury, they can have a higher risk of being injured again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main precursor to somebody having an injury, especially soft tissue injuries. So they're the big ones, really, because they're the ones, once they start reoccurring, that's like an issue. For example, a hamstring injury, the biggest marker for a hamstring injury is a previous injury. So there was a saying, I don't know if it still gets used, it does get, I've heard it used a lot, is once a hamstring, always a hamstring. So it is a fact that if once you've had a hamstring injury, you're more likely to have another one. Once you've had a quad injury, you're more likely to have another one. So how that's done is, it used to go off, like you would hear things like ACL, 9 months. And that come from kind of surgeons saying, right, well, it takes 9 months for that structure to be strong. So that's kind of, and I've seen non-league players who have said, oh, well, it's been 9 months, so I can go back play now, and they haven't done any tests. But that doesn't happen in the real world. So what they use is a criteria-based return to play. So they'll have objective markers. So they'll have like factual things. Like, for example, you come back from an ACL injury, you would need to have your quads. So say if you've done your left knee, you'd want your left quad to be within 90% of the strength of your right knee before you would go on and before you would push it a little bit more, before you would kind of even return back to training. And if it wasn't, you're not ready. And there's different things in different injuries where you have these specific markers that they're targets to hit. And until you've hit that target, you can't go into the next phase and the next phase and the next phase. Now, the problem is teams need points. So there'll always be people and clubs who will take risks and think, right, well, if we can shave a couple of days off here and there and gamble and they get the 3 points, then we'll do that because it's an educated risk. Now, the club's focus is winning 3 points. It's not on the individual person's injury history. Now, for the medical staff, it might be. For that player, it definitely is. It's more important to that player that they come back right now. We spoke off air and mentioned a player, and he's currently injured now. We won't mention him, but he's currently injured now, and I know for a fact that he was carrying an injury. He was basically needed to play in a local derby. Again, we'll not mention the player. Needed to play in a local derby. He came back, played, was unbelievable. Played another game, was unbelievable. Looked like, the medical staff were crazy for trying to hold him back a little bit. He's now out injured. He might now miss the Euros. So for the individual player, it could have massive connotations. For the club, they got 4 points out those 2 games, they'll put another player in that position. So it's one of them where it's a conundrum. You've got to kind of take each case at its own merits. But generally speaking, the clubs are really conscientious, and they don't want to take risks on players. They'll always want to play. They'll always want somebody to be 100% fit. But in reality, you'll never ever be like it. I think that if people think that these players are going into games even 100% fit, there's no chance. Like a Premier League footballer, they'll feel stiff for 10 months of the year. Like they're going into games on painkillers, painkiller injections, anti-inflammatory injections. They're getting treatment 2 or 3 days times a day. They're icing their knees and ankles all the time. They're doing cryotherapy. They're constantly in a position where they're never ever 100% fit. And I was told very early on in my career that and I overheard players being told, if you're going to wait until you're 100% fit to play a game, you'll be lucky to have a career worth 150 games. That you won't get that. If you want to play a game, have a career where you're getting 500, 600, 700 games under your belt, and you've had a proper career and made a proper living from the game, you're going to have to play through pain. You're going to have to play while 70, 80% fit. Now, there's a balance to that, and when that becomes dangerous, or when that leaves you more predisposed to longer term injuries, and that's the balance that they're always trying to do.
That's fascinating, all that. I mean, it's a sort of side of football that no one really sort of like in sort of classic pub debate. It's all like, oh, he's the best, he's the best. But I find it really fascinating. So Stephen, thank you very much for speaking to me about it.
No bother.
It's been really fascinating.
I mean, like I say, the level I've been. Listen, I was at Middlesbrough. I was really a fly on the wall. I was at uni. My first year at Middlesbrough was my last year at uni. I was really lucky to get a placement like that. My second year, I was a graduate, so I kind of had a clue what I was doing, but I was literally just learning every day, doing massages, talking to players, talking to coaches, trying to learn as much as I could from the people around us. And then I've been in non-league football, trying to apply what I've learned in professional football and what I've learned from studying and courses. And I've done different workshops, and I've done study visits with clubs and supporter clubs, and I had my own podcast, and which I just used, to be honest, to try and speak to people for free, really. And I've just tried to apply everything that I've learned into kind of non-league football or into the academy that I was at. But I literally, I haven't skimmed the surface in terms of what goes on behind the scenes in a Premier League football club, a Championship football club, day to day. To be honest, the proper heroes are like the ones in League Two and in League One, where a medical staff at a League Two club might have a physio, and if they're lucky, a couple of interns. Whereas you go to a Premier League medical staff, and you might have osteopaths, chiropractors, doctors, sports nutritionists, performance psychologists, 5 sports massage therapists, 3 physios, like unbelievable. Like they are full on multidisciplinary medical teams, strength and conditioning coaches, sports science, or everything. But that doesn't necessarily translate into, 3 points. It's just a case of you're trying to give the players, every club will within their budget try to give the players no excuse and all the support they can. And for me personally, all I've ever tried to do with any club that I've been at is within the budget that I get, which is nothing compared to all these clubs, is just try to do the best I can, try to get the most bang for me buck in terms of exercises, the most bang for me buck in terms of equipment that I get. Some treatments that I do, I wouldn't use. I try to only get MRI scans for the people that really need it, and try and save the budget for stuff like that. Try to make sure that I've had good relationships with a lot of physios. Like, I think one of the big dangers of people, especially at my level, is that they try to be everything to everyone, and they try to be an all. And like, there's nobody refers people out more than I do. There's nobody more prepared to say, I don't know, I need to ask, than me, because, I'm a one-man band at my club, really. I've got a great student with us, Oscar, who's fantastic, helps me at Morpeth. But there's loads of things I don't know. So I'm sharp to go to other physios, osteopaths, we use chiropractors, but osteopaths, physios, consultants that I know. I still, if anyone ever does an ACL, I try to use the surgeon that Middlesbrough used a lot. That I used to take players and supervise their trips there, and I'm able to get MRIs a little bit cheaper because of relationships I've had while I've been there and stuff. So I've just tried to use everything at my disposal to try and give the best service that I can at the level that I'm at with the budget that I'm at. And so far, so good. Doing all right. And I'm doing all right.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear. As I say, like some fascinating insight there, which I hope will go down quite well.
Tangents. I'm just talking rubbish a lot of the time. I'm aware of that.
No, as I say, no, I think it's fascinating because as I say, it's quite a contentious topic at the moment, especially in Newcastle with the whole sort of debate around this, whatever they should and shouldn't be in. But no, it's been fascinating to talk. So thank you very much.
I mean, if you think about it, are Newcastle where they are because they've had a few extra days off?
It's probably more. It's a tactical thing that I'd say.
Yeah, and that's not for me to say. I mean, you're a Newcastle fan. You can sit in the bars and say, and give your opinions. And to be fair, I've listened to a lot of your stuff, and like they're really reasoned. You know, I think there's a lot of people who would go, well, you know, you're giving an unqualified opinion, but everyone's opinion's valid. Everyone's entitled to an opinion.
Oh, massively so.
And you know, I listened to the one that you've done with Cuz last week. It was excellent, and I think he gives some great points. So yeah, I think, you know, as supporters, you always want to, I suppose, think you know best. I mean, I've just seen the England squad, and somebody put up their best, you know, their 11, and you know, it was like absolutely not getting slaughtered. And then if you ask them to come up with theirs, they probably come up with like 9 out of the 11. You know, there's always just 1 or 2 players that would have any one difference, and that's football. That's why we all love it, because
that is why we all love it.
Everyone's entitled to an opinion.
Opinions are what make football, to be honest.
100%, and nobody can ever be proved wrong. That's a fact. Stephen,
thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're going to say how are the lads now, no?
That's how I have to end these things. it's my little trademark. I saw it.
You've been the last few weeks. I've just been laughing because it's went from a how are the lads to a how are the lads.
Yep. That is exactly what has happened.
Well, we've been winning trophies.
Well, exactly. I know it's. I mean, but yeah, it's got less enthusiastic each time I've done it. I must admit. Especially on my little 60-second premium reviews, and I start a bit more positive, and I'll go, how are the lads? But then I'll just go, how are the lads? Yeah. But anyway, no, that wraps things up. So thank you all very much for watching, and how are the lads? See, that was better, that one.